All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. We have really been looking forward to this for a long time. It's been an event a long time in the making, but we really appreciate everybody's support in coming out, just being excited for ng-conf. Wow, like, isn't it the craziest thing that we're finally going back in person? It's been kind of surreal because I don't know. I used to work for ng-conf, and so I've kind of gone through this like experience of here we were planning our last event in Salt Lake, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and the news broke that everybody had to be isolated, and we scrambled in a 2-week period to take our entire in-person event and put it all online for our first ever virtual event. It was madness, it was crazy, but because of who the ng-conf organizers are, it was possible and they made it happen. So it was amazing. And yet then we had to wait another year, but here we are, and I'm just so excited, and I know everybody else is, and that was really what we wanted to do with this event, was just to capture that excitement and make it possible, because unfortunately when we have these in-person events, it's not possible for everybody around the world to come in. So one main purpose behind holding tonight's meetup was to make it possible for people who are around the world to have an opportunity to come and just hang out with some of our speakers and with the community and have that kind of outlet. So thank you for coming. Really, Angular Community Meetup wouldn't exist without the attendees, without all of you. So thank you for coming. But I also want to take a minute and thank our sponsors. Again, just without their support, their partnerships, it wouldn't be as possible to do these events. So thank you to each of our partners and sponsors. And then I personally want to say thank you to my co-organizers. They've been such a fantastic team, and they haven't skipped a beat anywhere. When I ask them to do something, they get it done. Usually they're 5 steps ahead of me anyway, so I don't really have to ask them a lot of times, but I do want to really thank them, because this is all volunteer based, and many of them have had huge events going on. We had one just get married, another one's having a baby. I mean, just lots of job changes, and yet they've all been so dedicated and put out emails and helped with tweets and just everything. So I really appreciate their time and their help. We do have the code of conduct. So Jason or Chris or someone, if you could share that link. Basically, I think we all know the drill by now. We've been doing 2 years, 3 years of these online events. Please be courteous and respectful. Just use appropriate language. Treat each other with kindness, and let's just be excited and have fun. If there are any kind of breaches in the code of conduct, this is your one and only warning, and we'll just kick you out and not let you back in. That's just how it's going to go. But also, if someone is harassing you or sending you private messages or saying something that's making you uncomfortable, please reach out to one of the organizers. There's a handful of us here, so you can reach out to me privately, Jason, Warner, Chris, and then we've got like Preston, Alex, Blake. So find one of us, and we'll be more than happy to help take care of things. And then please engage with us. At some of our events, we try to let you come on and share your screen, but tonight, with how many speakers we have and everything, that's just not going to be possible. But where we do want you to engage with us is in the chat. So please be putting comments and questions and things there. I will say though that if you have a question, because we're like with tonight, we're going to have 2 sessions of fireside chats with our ng-conf speakers. So in our first session, we'll have Kate Skye and Craig Spence and Erik Slack. And then in our second session, we'll have Deborah Kurata and Alisa Duncan and Preston and Jordan Powell. So Preston Lamb, sorry, I skipped your last name. And then Jordan Powell. But if you have questions for any one of them or for any of them collectively, what I'm going to have you do is put your questions into the Q&A, and we'll try to do like a little bit of a vote so that if, once we get through our questions that we're going to ask them, then we'll save some time at the end of each fireside chat, and we'll try to have like a little vote on which questions we most want to ask from you, the attendees. And then we'll ask as many as we can get through. But each session is going to be about 20 minutes. And then in between our two fireside chats, we do have one 20-ish minute talk with a company called InnoVint, and they have a really exciting talk for us, basically focusing on PWAs. So I'll let them kind of introduce the topic a little bit more. They have been planning and preparing for this for a while, so I know it's going to be a really great talk. One thing I do want to just kind of plug is the Angular Experience podcast. This is a podcast that many of our speakers here have actually come on and been a guest on the show. So I know Deborah and Jordan, Preston's been part of it, Kate's been part of it, Erik. Gee, I wonder who Erik might be. He's one of the hosts with me. So what I love about this podcast, though, is that it's helping developers level up their career outside of just the coding. So all of those other parts of your career, whether it's managing stress and anxiety, how to balance work with your family life. Deborah's episode was all about battling imposter syndrome. So there's a variety of topics. Jordan came on and was able to talk about running a nonprofit. So there's all sorts of topics, and it's all just focused on how to be your best self as a software engineer or as a developer, a programmer. But please go listen to it. It's fun. And we do have some exciting news. We're not ready to share that yet, but just kind of a heads up that Angular Experience has some big changes coming, and we're really excited to share those with you pretty soon. And then this was just one of our more recent episodes. We had Jeff Cross on to talk about how to manage your career in uncertain times. So definitely worth a listen. Tonight's prizes, I'm going to have Jason come and help me. So Jason, all I can see is my screen. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Awesome. I know we have, so for tonight's prizes, I know we have one subscription to Wallaby. They're one of our newest sponsors and partners, so Wallaby JS. And then we have two, and how many times, Jason, have we said we don't know how to pronounce this word? You know what, Craig, you will know how to say this. How do you pronounce, is it Quokka?
It's Quokka.
Quokka. Okay. So we have two subscriptions to Quokka. And then we also have an Amazon gift card for, I think it's $50 with STG, so Software Technology Group. They're based here in Utah. And if anybody's looking for a job or needs to find someone to fill a position, STG is an excellent company to help you with that. If you see Christina Larson here in the chat, I'm sure she would love to connect with you. But yeah, they'll be sharing a gift card as well. And then Jason, why don't you share the ones that you have?
Yeah, we also are partnered with Breebug. They've been an amazing partner. And theirs is specific to kind of the US and Canada just due to legal issues. But they offer a gift card and then a free t-shirt that they will ship out. And then we also have, we've got a bunch of licenses from JetBrains. We can give out 4 licenses tonight. So
nice. Very nice. Okay, so that's it. Now I'm looking at our attendees right now. I have kind of some annoying news, which is that we have this awesome game of Kahoot planned, a big mass trivia, Angular trivia game. I've just learned recently that Kahoot has decided to put a cap on how many people can play. So if we keep our attendees at where we are currently right now, we can all play in Kahoot. If that doesn't work, though, if there's more attendees than what Kahoot will let, we're still going to play it. We're still I'll still share my screen and everybody can still participate. I think a few of us just won't be able to log in. So what I'll probably do is just have some of my co-organizers not log on, and we'll try to make it possible for everybody. But that being said, this is at the very end of the event. So we'll go through our fireside chats. We'll have our talk in the middle. Very end of the night is this massive trivia Angular game. The prizes are not going to be associated with that. So the prizes are going to be randomized even after the game. We've just found that when it comes to prizes, we like to not tie it to, because there's kind of ways to, I don't know, people have learned how to play the system with Kahoot. So we've learned that it's best just to randomize the prizes, make it fair for everybody. And yeah, I think that'll be the way to go. So with that, I think we've gone through everything. Does everybody feel ready? You guys all ready just to get this going? Get the party started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I found a way for panelists to chat with everyone. I threw it in the Slack message that just messaged you.
Okay, thank you.
You can do it if you want. It might be too late already.
We'll see. Just because I'm going to be running this. So, all right. I think what we'll do then, I'm going to have everybody turn your cameras off, except for in our first group, we have Kate and Erik and Craig. So we're going to get started with them. And let me switch gears here. First of all, how are all three of you? Are you feeling prepared and ready for next week, or not quite?
Oh, thank you that you're not as prepared as I thought you would be.
I'm stressing. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I've still got a bit to do. I had to hire a costume yesterday. Don't worry why. But, yeah, still got stuff to do.
Now I'm more excited though.
You're more excited now because everybody else is still.
But didn't he just say he has a costume? Is that what you just said?
That's what he said.
What is this costume now? So you're going to go like Ward Bell style, because Ward always has his great costumes.
So it's not actually for myself for the talk. Put it that way.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I shan't reveal more details.
That's even more fun. I can't wait.
This will be great. Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, I have my questions pulled up here. So I'm going to kind of go through like a variety of questions, because one of my favorite things, whether that's with the Angular Experience podcast or with ng-conf, is just getting to know people outside of who they are as developers. I think there's this tendency that when we all get together, we ask each other like developer related questions, but we're all so much more than just our job. And so I love getting to know you, especially like those kinds of things, Craig, like dressing up in costumes. Like I love that about your personality. You're always someone that's up for a great time and just being spontaneous. So let's get to know you all in a more complete way, I guess I could say. So I'm going to start with a few questions here, and I'm going to ask to start off with, like, what was your favorite, and you can go through this, you can just jump in, share your answers, however, but what was your favorite toy as a kid? Erik, I'm going to make you go first because you're used to dealing with questions like this.
Oh yeah, I love questions like this, Brooke. So thank you for asking me for one, and thanks for having me here.
Yes.
Everyone, my favorite toy, this is really important for you to remember, was a Nintendo. It's pretty easy to remember. And I'm talking about old NES, like the original Nintendo.
But what was your favorite game on there then?
Metroid. Yeah.
Okay.
Good
Nice.
times. I also played a lot of Zelda though, and that may have been my favorite game sometimes, but I just lost so much that was a very hard game for me.
Nice. All right, Craig and Kate, did you have a favorite toy?
I had a couple. I think if I'm like truly honest with myself, it was like Optimus Prime. I had one of those, like the original Transformy Optimus Prime thing, and that was pretty sweet. But then also just Lego. Lego's been like a constant in my life, so I guess that counts too.
So true. Good. Do you collect the minifigs at all?
No, I'd have no money if I did. I can't stop with those things.
That's so true. All right, Kate, what about you? A favorite toy?
Well, besides that, I didn't really have a lot of toys growing up. I did once I got a little older and electronics like started becoming mainstream. I had this electronic handheld game console. And it's funny, I googled it on YouTube, and it says a fox catching eggs, but it's really not a fox. It's a wolf.
Oh,
But it's a little game where there's like 4 buttons and the eggs kind of coming down and he's trying to catch it with the basket. So that was like closer to me being a teenager. So
yeah, but game.
yeah, a game. Yeah, that was fun. I remember finding something very similar when I got here to the States, and I had to have that game. Like it was similar. I don't remember which kind though it was, but I had a similar one here too. And I was like older. I was playing it. I still wanted to play it.
That's awesome. All right, so then I like this kind of question too, because I think everybody can relate to this. Like we've all kind of wondered, if I were in a movie, what movie would I be in and what character would I want to be? So have you ever thought about that, and how would you answer that?
This is hard because are you asking who do we wish we were like, or are you asking who really represents what kind of character would I be if I was actually in a movie?
You know, I'll let you answer it both ways. Like if you have a movie that you feel like represents you, and there's like a certain actor that you would want to act you or something like that, that's fine. Or just like, I mean, it's probably no secret. Everybody knows I love Star Wars. So I'd probably be in some kind of Star Wars movie, and I'd be like a Rey Skywalker. I'd probably actually be Ahsoka, but she's not technically in a movie yet. So like that kind of a thing.
So like,
I mean, mine's obvious. I just put me in Frozen, make me a snowman. I'll be happy forever.
Wow.
There we go.
Slightly
I didn't
more
know you
emo
could use
Ola.
cartoons. You can't use cartoons. Okay. It's a good one.
Well, what about you, Kate?
I don't know. I was thinking, like, I really like this movie Ex Machina, but I don't want to be a robot, so I would be like the inventor.
I don't want to spoil that movie, but it doesn't. I don't know.
I know.
I'd rather be the robot.
Really evil. I know there is a bad ending to it, but the whole movie was kind of fun.
It's a good movie. All right, so I've always loved Iron Man. If I could be Tony Stark, I would love to be. But my personality and my skills are so far away from what that character portrays, that I'm probably more like the blonde man in Frozen.
What's his name? Craig.
I mean, Kristoff.
Kristoff, thank you. Yes, exactly. Yeah, because I'm a romantic and I talk to my pets. And
I was going to say, you talk to reindeers often?
Nice. We can just hang out in Frozen Land.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so then let's move on to some ng-conf questions here. Now, have you all actually attended in person or not yet?
No.
Yeah. Not yet. Okay.
No.
Have you
I
been
went in
to Salt Lake
2018.
in 2018? So, Craig, what was something that you enjoyed doing while you were here? So for people who were able to travel and come into Salt Lake, what's something you would recommend? And Erik, what's something you would recommend that they do while they're here in Salt Lake?
So for me, again, easy one. Salt Lake, for some unknown reason, has like the second largest vegan population in the US. So there's a ton of awesome vegan food I just ate the whole time I was there. So
Nice.
looking forward to getting back to a few places. I'm also going to try to go climbing while I'm there. So
Okay, yep. And it's the perfect weather here. I'm actually sitting outside right now. Beautiful, beautiful weather. So yeah, if you have a chance to go and like hike and explore, definitely recommended.
All right,
Like
you
by
said I had
yourself?
to choose a restaurant. Oh, go ahead, Kate. Sorry.
Yeah, is it like walking by yourself hiking? Or like I would be scared to go by myself.
You could, like there is some that's up like it's very open and there's lots of people around, so you could potentially go. But even just exploring like in the neighborhoods and down the streets, there's tons of people. There's a local like transportation here that's called Tracks, and it's right in front of the hotel. So like if you're staying at the Grand America, and it's really easy just to hop on, take that downtown. You can do some shopping like at the malls. Very easy to get around. But yeah, like you could go explore some of the parks, and there's just different like city, I don't know, like people walk their dogs around the parks, and so it's good. Like you could be out alone or with take some buddies and go with them. Either way.
Oh.
Yeah, there's like some little waterfalls around too, which is interesting because it's a desert. So you go up in those mountains and you'll see some beautiful scenery, rivers and streams, not rivers, streams and waterfalls. Utah's having a water problem right now.
Kind of, yeah. Except we're like we are a desert, right?
We are a desert.
We are a desert.
Also, the airport does not represent Utah. So if you see the most ugly place possible,
oh no,
when you land,
it's nice now. They've like it's new and updated. Have you not seen it in the last little while?
I've seen that they added a whole new area for like rest, like a stomp area and stuff, but it's still like there's just dirt and mud and sand and everything there, and there's like no beautification that I can tell.
There was because it's like sort of under construction, but when you're inside, it's like nice, and there's like all these new sculptures, and it's white and open, and it runs very nicely now. So hopefully that's more of your experience.
Good.
Yeah.
When I first got to Utah, I was like, this place is so ugly. Why am I here?
Well,
but it's actually really pretty.
Yeah.
Utah.
So what's your top recommendation, Mr. Utah Local?
All right. So I heard that there's some people who like vegan food, and a great vegan cuisine is, of course, Indian food. And so if you love Indian cuisine, then maybe try this place called Bawarchi in Sandy, Utah. It's not right there in Salt Lake City, so you'll have to go a little bit. But I'll be honest, I don't know too much about Salt Lake City cuisine because I have so many options here where I live. So I will send a link to the chat that somebody who can speak to everyone can repost for me.
Very nice. Okay. All right. So then let me ask this. This is something we can all answer, whether you've done in person or online. Do you have a talk from a previous ng-conf that just stands out to you as like your ultimate favorite talk?
I have one, but I don't want to keep going first.
Oh,
I'll go first. I went last time. Mark Thompson's rap freestyle of, God, what did he even talk about? It was just amazing. The content was good. And if I were to pick a second, it would be Jennifer Wadella's talk on reactive forms and like a journey. And it was all about like a wizard or like a fantasy world journey. It was super
choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So you're asking about other people's talks. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's asking me about my talk. Okay, good. So I have one. Ever since I got into Angular for a few years now, one of my favorites was Shai Raznik and the Mike Brockie with the switch map operate. I mean, it literally taught me the beginning of RxJS, because I had no idea when I just started. I was like a full stack developer coming from C#, so I was like learning as much as I can. That was epic. Like, it was fun. It was very entertaining and like visually learning and in a fun manner. So I really like that one. It really stuck for sure. Nice. I'm sure there were other players. It's just like those two names I remember for sure because I work with Mike. But who else was in that skit? I think there was someone else.
That was my one too. That's my favorite.
I'm glad I stole it from you.
That's good.
That's awesome. He also did that like magic show though. That was on I think our very first online one, and he did that. He was like, he had the wig on and his magician costume. Do you guys remember that one? That was pretty fun. I liked that one too.
Shy talks are legendary. So
Yeah.
He
And
sets a
now
high bar.
he's the host.
Bar,
So
for
I
sure.
think it's going to be like 3 full days of like this mad craziness of Shy and Alisa Nykel. That's going to be great to have them together. So
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so let's kind of get into some more programmer developer related questions. And one I think that has become, I don't want to say more important because it's always important, but I think has become something that's maybe on more people's minds because we've all been more isolated with COVID. And that's just our mental health. So is there something that the 3 of you feel like you do in your day-to-day or weekly or monthly, or just something that really focuses on your mental health?
I can go first. I'm all about trying to balance everything out because my life is kind of chaotic right now. And really the only thing that helps me is just like go back to your body, work out, eat healthy, get enough sleep. If I don't do that, I just like I lose it 100%. So I'm like, I just have to kind of pull myself out and like go back to like the beginning. The beginning is your body was made, and then everything else.
Yeah.
That's what helps me.
So kind of reset, take care of
Yep.
body and then the mind. Nice.
Yeah, ground yourself. Just don't think about anything but the moments that you're experiencing right now, which is a lot of times like if you're running or doing like weight training, it's really hard, right?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to think about your problems or whatever induced your anxiety. So that helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too. I was like properly, got a good old generalized anxiety / depression combo diagnosis a few years ago. And so if I don't look after that stuff, don't look after my body, don't sleep, don't work out, I go insane very, very quickly. So just keeping on top of those things, not letting work and conference and those things become more important than my brain, because I can't do any of that stuff if my brain isn't good. So yeah, same for me.
For me, it's focus on being kind and trying to have good relationships and really focusing on remembering other people. When my relationships, the most important ones are good between like me and my wife, my kids, my family members. That can really help me a lot, even weather so many storms, and just like seeing somebody when it's really nice to see like my children and they give me hugs and kisses, and that really like helps me deal with so much stress. Look at me getting emotional about it, but yeah, my
It's really
family
cute, Eric.
they also cause my stress, but they also fix my
Exactly.
stress.
Nice. Okay, so just kind of like pulling back together, spending time with family. I like all 3 of those answers. And it's so important. Totally. I think we forget sometimes how important it is really, if we want to be successful at our jobs, we really do need to just kind of forget our jobs for a little bit, right? Like put it aside and remember that there's more to us than just work, even though it's hard sometimes. All right. So kind of now go back to work mode is, and I've definitely experienced this myself. I think when you're so focused on getting through your stories and your cards, you've got your sprint, your deadlines. How are you making time to go and learn things outside of just your work projects? So if you have personal, and obviously all 3 of you do, because you're all making time to give conference talks and share blog articles and videos and other things. So how are you organizing your time to do that, and kind of balancing that with your workload? And
My answer has been just to work less.
okay, well, let me put one question at the end of that too, is how much time do you dedicate to personal projects outside of work hours?
I think that's a really great question, Brooke, because a lot of people that I've met wonder like how to be successful. Like, how much time out of work do I need to spend studying code or working on personal projects so that I can level up beyond just my work, which I already spend a terrific amount of time. Anyway, it's just a good question. Sorry, I interrupted you, Craig. Go for it.
No, I was going to say, like, my probably biggest hack that I can share is I'll submit talks to conferences on stuff I know nothing about, and then I'll get a deadline and I'll have to work towards that thing. That's my biggest one, because it's very hard to motivate myself a lot of the time. But if I know I've got to do that, then I'll just to set myself up for a big fail if I don't do it. Plus, it's an interesting way to come up with an idea for something and then see if it works. I kind of like that challenge too. So.
Yeah, can I add to that? Actually, we did Angular experience talk with Greg a long time ago, a few months ago probably, and it was just about this topic. I think it was called Lazing Up Your Tech Talk, right? Brooke, I think that's what it was called, and I was a panelist on that, and I've been using that, not as extensively as you do, because just my personal life is really crazy busy, plus I have demanding workload. But that's kind of like I've been motivating myself, like, let me just submit, and if I get accepted, then I'll just work extra hard. But it's you really can't make time, because we all have the same amount of time in a day, right? It's just a matter of priorities. What is your priority? And sometimes when you get chosen for a conference or for a meetup, you're like, well, all of a sudden everything else is not a priority anymore. You got to work on your talk.
Yeah, and just one other thing to add is, like, it's actually okay to like go for a little while and not learn a bunch of stuff. Like, I've been in a phase for probably the last 6 months where I've just been again focusing on other stuff, not trying to push and learn and grow massively, because sometimes it's tiring and you need a break. So a lot of us look like we're out here all the time doing talks and doing things, or but I'm recycling talks. I'm not always making new ones. Being visible is often bigger than growing. But it's okay to just chill as well.
I like that advice. I want to add to that this year I threw at ng-conf 4 different CFPs, and most of them were things that I knew that I would be able to prepare quickly, prepare efficiently, because I knew that this year of all years, for personal reasons, is going to be really tight. And so if I have to prepare a talk for ng-conf, I need to be able to do it quickly. So, but the question that was asked as well, I want to give a shout out for people who mentor others. I find that I learn like way more when I'm trying to teach people. And that's sort of the theme of what Kate and what Craig have already said, because when you're preparing a talk, you're mentoring others, you're teaching others, and you learn a lot. Keeping your skills sharp, there's a ton of different mechanisms that you can do it. But I like the mechanisms that I accomplish 2 things at once, and by mentoring someone else, I'm helping their life as well as helping myself be able to explain things better. When you're giving a talk or writing an article, you are creating content for the public space that other people are going to be benefit from, but you also feel like so anxious to, or like so responsible to make this information accurate and followable, and make your code so that they could just copy it and paste it and then like edit it, because they're going to do that. So yeah, teach others and share your knowledge. That's a great way to up your skills. If you're just starting out in your career, though, we were all there. Spending time working on side projects is a fantastic way to level up. Maybe dream big and see if you can become the next, the next Uber or something. Like, come up with something cool that you can make a ton of money from. And if it doesn't work out, you've still learned a ton while you were doing it.
Nice. Yeah. And just don't be afraid to ask for help. I think it's intimidating when you first get in the industry, but try to find a mentor if you can. It makes all the difference. Okay, last question for you all is, you can answer this any way you want, but like what do you find to be the most difficult about programming, and how do you work through that? How do you push through that challenge? I know it's kind of a hard one to answer, isn't it?
I'm going to take a stab. For me, it's debugging. Debugging just like things that, like, sometimes there's different levels of it, but some of the worst things are like intermittent issues, things that span multiple systems for you to be able to figure it out, things that don't give like clear error messages to tell you why it's breaking. Sometimes it's, honestly, I feel like logic errors are usually fairly simple to diagnose because you can follow your logic. But when there's some system you're relying on, or some library, or even like an internal issue with a library, that's super hard. If it's an intermittent like issue with some service that you're consuming as well, that could be super hard. Or you have like a chain of like 15 services that you're calling, and it's like, which one is breaking and why does it break and things like that. But I will say things have gotten a lot easier since I've adopted like solid state management strategies for that. So I'm going to go with the things that don't bubble up good errors.
You're gonna go next, Craig?
Am I going to go next? Okay, cool. We can do that. I'm going to go meta again because I can't help myself. I think the hardest thing is always it's very rarely what you're building, how you're building a thing, but it is like building the right thing, right? So you've got obviously the whole scale of engineering problems that are above just programming, like the teamwork, the prioritization, the quality control, the kind of not that just I need to write some code and write a function that does a thing, but how do I know that I'm actually building something good for the right reasons, for the right audience? That'll always be the hard part. Yeah, I think so.
So next, hardest thing about programming for me, it's just I don't really have like that thing that's so hard for me anymore, which is touche. I mean, I know, but it's I just don't work on things I don't know right now. Like once you become like a consultant where you work on something that they want you to work on, you become so good at it, you don't really go to any other new areas, so you're confident, right? Like if you put me into something that never worked before, then I'll be like scared and like not knowing what to do, but I'll just research the heck out of it, try all the different ways and figure it out, and then I'll be good at it again. So I'm not scared of figuring things out. But like Craig said, the team dynamic sometimes scares me, like especially when you start on a new project. It's like, am I gonna get along? Is that person gonna be nice? Am I really gonna be able to work through the things that they expect you to work on and like be successful at that? So a lot of times, like I remember one of my projects, I actually went to one of it was either PM or somebody, and I asked, like, you guys are complaining about these other people that were in a project, like how could I be successful on this project? Like what should I do different from these other people that you talk bad about that no longer with the company? And they'll come out and straight up and tell you, like, read the acceptance criteria, test your code, like really simple things. But when they speak it back to you and you can kind of analyze it, it helps because you know exactly what they didn't like. And it wasn't personal, it was something like technical that you can improve on. And if it was personal, then you can also tweak sometimes because it's people's business, no matter how much code we write, we still work with people. So that's kind of my thing.
Love it. I love all your answers, and thank you for kind of opening up there and just sharing. I know it's not easy to be put on the spot, so I think sometimes these fireside chats are almost harder than anything because you don't really have a ton of time to prepare. So we really appreciate all of you coming and sharing that. But let's get into our talk, our one presentation for the night. So I'm going to have Dan, why don't you come on, and then we'll have you kind of share, a quick little preview of what your talk is going to be on. And then did I need to promote somebody else, Dan, to come present with you?
No, it'll be just me today.
Okay, cool. Then, yeah. And Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about like where you're coming from, more about InnoVint and what the company does, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hey, good morning, good evening. Pretty cool world chat right now. I'm going to share my screen real quick, do a tech check. Yeah, real quick, I just want to say that was a really fun group chat. Lots of great reflection in there, and I particularly appreciated the reflections on sort of self-wellness and mental health. I think that's really important for the devs, so I just appreciate you being cognizant about that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then I have a brief intro about what we do in a second. Looks like I'm live, and I'll go from here. So, welcome to our talk. Now newly minted PWAs are awesome. We built an Angular PWA to replace our native iOS app. We love it. Our users love it. And honestly, I'm here today because I think you guys, the Angular community, is also gonna love it. My name is Dan Strengier. I'm actually calling in from San Francisco, California. I am the CTO of InnoVint. I co-founded the company about 8 years ago, where actually I built our wine production app back on Angular JS 1.1. You could sort of say I'm a long time lurker, first time poster with this presentation today. I've followed along honestly really closely with the Angular community throughout the years. Actually, fun fact, we still have some remnants of Angular JS in our code. For those that were around, I still got some $scope, VM, and $control sticking around, but we've got great TypeScript and Angular 13 there as well. I personally am just incredibly, excited to be here. The Angular community has provided so much to me and my company over the last 8 to 10 years. And, I'm thrilled to sort of be able to return the favor and contribute back some of that knowledge back to the community. On the right here is my colleague, Valentin. He is InnoVint's front-end tech lead, calling in from Germany. Valentin and I actually met through the Angular Discord a couple years ago. He actually was writing an article right up for Angular 11 and a Minko chat. It was pretty neat. Anyways, I teamed with Valentin a couple years ago specifically to build this sort of pie-in-the-sky PWA back then. And today we're going to sort of show you the fruits of that labor. I'm going to let Valentin say hi here.
Hi, everyone. This is Valentin from Germany. It's 2:30 a.m. for me right now, so I'm probably asleep. But I will be walking you through the tech implementation of the InnoVint PWA later on. For now, I'll pass back over to Dan.
Cool.
Hi, everyone. This is Valentin from Germany.
Anyways, thanks, Valentin. We actually realized sort of late that the time zone wasn't going to work out. I think it's actually 3:30 in the morning for him, but I think we've got some good pre-recorded stuff from him. All right. Look, today's goals is pretty simple. I'm going to try my very best to convince you that 1, PWAs are in fact awesome. 2, that they can rival native apps in terms of user experience. And 3, you should definitely consider them as a viable platform to build mobile apps on in 2022. How are we going to do that? I'm going to do an overview about what is a PWA. I'm going to do a brief demo. I'm going to go through some pros and cons of PWAs, provide a brief case study about how we got here. I'm going to talk a few of the nuances about the installation of PWAs and the nuances between iOS and Android. And then Valentin has some great, juicy Angular deep dive content on all the technologies that we implemented in the app itself. All right, I did want to sort of mention why we're creating this content. Actually, a couple of years ago, when we were first considering building a PWA, I actually saw very little literature out there on how you can holistically build a PWA. especially with examples of people that have actually gone all in. The best examples I saw was sort of Twitter. And most folks don't know that Twitter has a PWA. I think there's a fair amount of content covering all the individual facets of PWAs, but very little what teams have sort of gone all in. And spoiler, like we have gone all in on the PWA, and I'm excited to sort of share what we've learned with the community. All right, let's just start out with what is a PWA. I did a quick Google search and listed the very first thing I saw, which was from Mozilla, and let's honestly read it together. So progressive web apps are web apps that use service workers, manifests, and other web platform features in combination with progressive enhancement to give users an experience on par with native apps. That was a lot for me to say. Really, what did we just say there? You know, here's my personal definition that's, I think, much clearer. My best definition for a PWA is a mobile web app that looks and feels as good as native apps. PWAs, in my opinion, are a mentality, not a specific set of features that you must implement. At your disposal is a lot of great bells and whistles you can use to ultimately try and trick the user that your app is native. And I will say, if you must get technical about it, I do think the industry standard is you got to at least have a service worker, but even that I sort of think is maybe debatable. All right, so you might be asking yourself, have we been talking about this? How have we been doing this for the last decade? What was up with the responsive web app craze? And my response to that is sort of. We sort of been doing that. You know, first, I think we can sort of agree that both the names kind of stink. I've always thought that they stunk. Here's how I'll sort of convince you that they're different. Responsive web apps allow you to view a website reasonably effectively on your phone. That mental model, though, when you do that, never suggests you are using a full-blown native app. You know it's a website in your heart of hearts. A PWA's goal is to make the user think it's not a website, but in fact, it's an app. I have this sort of unofficial smell test that I've been doing, and this is to see, this is the test to see if you actually achieved what I consider PWA status. Hand your newly created PWA that you're proud of to any of your software friends, full screen mode, and ask them, you know, what is this? And if they say it's a native app, congrats, you've achieved PWA success. All right, so that's a lot of talk and sort of hype on PWAs. I do think it's important to try to do a quick demo so at least you can see what we've achieved. And then we're going to go through a lot of cool stuff about this throughout the talk. So note that this was recorded directly from my phone a couple hours ago. You actually can't see my finger taps, but it was important to record from the phone and not from the browser so you could sort of see there was no smoke and mirrors or funny business. So the first thing I'm going to demo here is actually our offline functionality. So here's my home screen. I launched the app. Here's the InnoVint app. I tap the top right. We have this really cool cloud showing you're online. You have internet connection. We have gorgeous animations. You're going to see me turn airplane mode on. I go into iOS and disconnect. From here, the app recognized I'm actually online, but no problem. You can record actions right here. So in this example, I'm going to pull up a batch of wine in my professional winery here, I think somewhere, or, oh, sorry. I'm showing you that lots and vessels and vineyards are fully viewable offline. I'm going to go pull up a batch of wine. Here it is, my Sauvignon Blanc. I'm going to tap the analysis, I believe here, or Brix and Temp. This is a sugar reading during fermentation. I got to tap it somewhere. Okay, bummer, my video froze here. That's no good. Luckily, I have the raw video here, and I'm going to finish that demo because it's important. Let's share my screen, the whole thing. Okay, and we're back. Here we go. Easy live demo change. Okay, so I'm going to tap the record Brix Temp feature here. Again, this is fermentation. I'm going to enter a sugar reading, which is Brix, and a temperature reading, which is temperature. We all get that, and I'm going to record it. And you can see we say here the analysis is queued. You can see in the top right, the cloud is yellow, which means we don't have internet. We have one action that is saved and waiting for you to go. So I'm going to actually close the app. I'll go back to the home screen, and you'll see me literally check out. Okay, showing the history. Let's close the app here. I think I closed the app. Cool. I literally killed the app. It's now dead. I'm going to open the app back up in the bottom right of the screen just to sort of show that the data is still there in the top right. And I'm going to, you can see it's pending. I'm going to turn off airplane mode, and the app recognizes it has a connection again, and it will automatically submit that to the cloud. It does that all seamlessly for you. We could have turned off the device. We could have waited a few weeks. It's all stored in our offline mode. All right, moving on. I want to show one more demo, which is actually, let me reshare my screen here. Okay. I want to show QR code scanning. This is a really important workflow for us. Our wineries literally add QR codes to all their barrels and tanks, and they use our old native iOS app to go scan the barrels and sort of view details on them and record data. So it was important for us to emulate that experience on a PWA. And so that's what I'm showing here. Again, we open the phone from the desktop. We have a scan QR code button down here. I have a fake barrel. It scans and it pulls up a details page here. Scan the button event. Again, let's pull open this tank here, and it beeps. It takes you to the vessel. And then lastly, we have multi-scanning where you can set the scanner. I'm going to add this July inventory tag across all of my barrels. And now I'm going to go across the cellar floor and scan these barrels and tanks in quick succession. You can see how fast this is with QR code scanning, yada, yada, very slick, very smooth. And I also want to stress, this is also available completely offline, even if I didn't demo it. Okay, so that's sort of a very fast blast through what the app can do, or sort of what it looks like. I want to transition now sort of and talk about generally why would you do PWA? What's the benefits? Why wouldn't you just do a native app? Well, the first obvious one, honestly, is no app store. This is such a huge benefit. I could create several slides on how excited I am to not deal with the app store. For those that have made iOS apps, this is a huge, huge benefit, but I'll just leave it at that. I do think there is excellent performance that PWAs provide. 60 frames per second, touch rendering, touch interactions feel great. And honestly, I do think these are almost indistinguishable from native apps. I've done the sniff tests amongst my software peers, and I think we have passed it pretty well. We do achieve some pretty significant code sharing between desktop web apps and the mobile web app. And the cool thing is, it's the identical code between iOS and Android. It just works on both devices. That is so good. And I can't stress enough, this is honestly supremely faster velocity in shipping features. And when you're just writing JavaScript and HTML, that's it. And it works everywhere. A few other pretty cool things here is that we get real-time deploys without an app store getting in the way of me pushing features or updates to my users. I can release something in 3 minutes. It's as fast as my build process allows. We also get this kind of cool feature called forced updates, which I don't think you can do this on the App Store. Basically, we can force a complete update of the app that the user doesn't have sort of a choice to say, or they don't have to go to an App Store. We can just do that for them automatically. And I will sort of say this as sort of a dev manager these days, it's so helpful to have the developer accessibility for all of my devs to contribute to HTML and JavaScript. Like everyone sort of knows this code, how to write HTML and JavaScript to some extent, and it just makes it so much more accessible for our team members to hop in and contribute to a platform. I'm an Angular guru here. I'm probably preaching the choir here. I love the dev experience of writing Angular, the Angular CLI. I think it far trumps native app development. I'll just say Xcode has caused me a lot of pain and friction in the past. I won't, point fingers too much, but I just think Angular dev experience in 2022 is world-class, and I just think the developer experience is rock solid. So, all right, what are the drawbacks? There's got to be some downsides, and there is. The first thing here is there's no app store, and sort of my joke is like, for the student observers, that was a pro and a con. I think that's true. For some applications, being on the app store is a must-do for discoverability. I personally think that's a pretty rare condition, but nonetheless, some products do need that. And I'll also say the installation process really kind of stinks, and I'll show you that in a second. And then you do get limited access to niche platforms, niche sort of the APIs. You don't really get the augmented reality, the machine learning, the deep APIs that are not available to web browsers. There's another kind of drawback you should know. You actually can't stop people from using it from the browser. It's kind of annoying. I can't check if the app is installed to the phone. So if you're using the PWA from the web browser, I actually can't even do a check to be like, have you installed it yet? Can I nudge you? And maybe suggest that you should. But you can sort of monitor that with extra tools if you're really interested in pushing users to do that. All right, I'm gonna pause real quick, make sure everyone's good. It looks like it. Oh, push notifications coming up very soon. Love it. We'll talk push notifications real quick. Okay, I'm doing a real quick case study of how the heck did we do this PWA, how did it come about. So we're a small team. We were 6 at the time. We're now maybe 10, which is exciting. We're supporting a Python backend, an Angular JS and Angular 13 desktop web app. We built our own iOS native app. And then we get user requests for more features in the iOS app and to build an Android app. First of all, few people on this team are iOS experts. No one knows Android. And honestly, when we write code in the iOS, we're just duplicating features we've already written in desktop. It's so frustrating. It's such a bad use of our time. And so, we decided to build a PWA. I actually looked long and hard to find someone that believed in the possibility of PWAs and found Valentin. He and I linked up and made something pretty excellent over the next 12 months. The results, honestly, we released it, to my opinion, some pretty great reviews from our clients. We have stellar user adoption. We honestly have more features and functions that exist in our new app compared to our native iOS app, including offline support. That was pretty easy for us to build. We are already successfully sharing JavaScript between legacy desktop web app and the new PWA, and we get seamless Android and iOS support. Man, this is so good. And lastly, look, in case you can't tell, we're drinking the PWA Kool-Aid. So we're gone all in on why this is so powerful for us. I want to share some stats, not necessarily to gloat, but honestly, just to show that there was a positive outcome for our efforts. We released the app in private beta in early April to May last year, about 20 people, and then opened up to everyone. This for us is harvest. Harvest is nuts for us. Our system sees a 5x increase in adoption, and people really embrace the new web app. And then after harvest was over, we saw a same steady state utilization of the app, which models our server load in general of a 5x reduction. This tells us, though, we have complete adoption for the app. It's really solid. I just want to throw over here, we have a few power users that have recorded almost 4,000 individual winemaking actions in the app. Some are doing 300 a day. It really is a powerful tool that people have grown to love really in a very short time of us releasing it. All right, very quick, when is a PWA a good fit for your product? Honestly, I think B2B apps are no-brainers, especially CRUD apps. And I'll just say it, I think most of the things we do are CRUD. And I think a lot of applicability to PWAs applies here. And look, app to store discovery can't be important to you. I will say this, there is literally no benefit for InnoVint to be on the App Store. Like, we have never landed a client that was searching on the App Store for professional wine production software. It's just not how that works. We have Google gets that for us. So for us, this really wasn't a value add. So it helps them sort of a captive audience, I guess. The bad fit, I would say, really is the B2C apps where App Store discovery is important. I just think B2C is unlikely to be a good fit, at least for a while. There is sort of still this consumer expectation for your app to be on the app stores, and the awareness that even downloadable web apps are a possibility is still lacking. I will say, if you need leveraging fancy new APIs like machine learning, AR, or face recognition, you don't have those for PWAs yet, although I'm pretty, I would bet they will become available later. And I just kind of joke in here, if you have endless amounts of cash to throw at multiple teams to build the same features on all of your platforms, different code bases, sure, do the native approach. I get this a little tongue in cheek there, but there is some truth to that. I want to talk about installation. This is probably the only heartache I really have on PWAs these days. So without App Store, the users have to install the PWA by going to your website. To be fair, they actually don't have to install the app. The PWA is fully functional in a web browser, but I'm a user experience snob. It's so much better in the full screen view, and we really want them to install the app for the best experience. Unfortunately, iOS install is the biggest drawback. It doesn't have any helper tools to facilitate. The installation is obtuse. I'll show you a video of it. All that being said, we've got 70% installation rate across our users, but man, have we had to sort of really hold their hand and be like, hey, you started InnoVint, here's what you got to do. And let me show you those examples of how to install it now. So for Android on the right, it's so easy. You go to the website, Android opens up or provides a really great sort of hook where you can present a custom modal install. I'm sure we've all seen it. You press the button and it just installs. It's very nice. For iOS, Apple is a bit more cantankerous here. Here's how it works. So you have to go to, you literally go to your browser, you press the share button, you scroll up and you have to press add to home screen and you press add again. And now you'll see the InnoVint app is now here. You tap it, you get your full screen experience and you're good to go. For us, it's a one-time thing. When you onboard, we show them how to do that. We have videos. Once you do it, you never have to do it again. You know, it's there, and we get the forced updates. We get the, you know, you never have to do this experience again unless you get a new phone. So, okay, I want to talk about this last point here, but iOS versus Android. To be clear, Android gets all the cool tech. iOS lags far, far behind. And I can say that I actually was an old Apple guy, Apple employee many years ago. It's frustrating because Android gets all the cool PWA tech. However, every year, Apple concedes more and more, and they give us more and more functionality. You saw that cool QR code scanning. It wasn't until 2 years ago that Apple said, fine, we'll give you camera access to your PWA. And that was the trigger where I was able to do a PWA because QR code scanning is so critical for that. This is the huge one for us, push notifications. Android has had this for a few years. It is now coming to iOS 16. I'm shocked they did it. You know, it's coming. Is it going to be perfect in this release? Probably not. Next year, I bet it'll be rock solid. There's one really cool feature that I want to use, but I'm waiting for platform parity, is Android lets you do background data sync. So you saw how I had that offline demo. You have to open the app back up when you're online, and the app will seamlessly just automatically upload all of your data, which is fine. However, Android has an opportunity for in the background, you don't even have to open the app again. You go offline, go in the vineyard, take the photos of your crops, enter the analyses, close the app. Whenever you come back online, Android lets you register a background sort of worker there, I guess, to synchronize that. I would love for iOS to support that so we could have sort of parity between those platforms. All right, I know this is another talk. We wanted to provide some sort of deep in the weeds on some of the nuts and bolts of how we did it. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Valentin to share a bit more about the platform.
Hello again, everyone. So let's take a look now at the technology that powers our progressive web app and what we had to do to make it run well. So first of all, the most important part of any PWA is the service worker. So generally, a service worker is a JavaScript script that runs in a separate thread in the browser. And we register this script once at the first load, and it will afterwards act as a proxy. So it sits between our PWA client, which is your normal JS Angular app, and the backend and cross-domain CDN service, whatever the app accesses through the network. Basically, what it does is intercepts our requests, kind of as a proxy. And for example, any request sent to backend servers, any request sent to a JS file, CSS file, HTML file, anything at all, anything you can see in the Debug Tools Network tab is going to be intercepted by the PWA service worker. And this even works when the device is offline or when you do full page reload. The thing is, when we're offline, we can basically have the service worker, instead of returning a 404 or just a network error, we can serve a locally cached version of the JS or HTML. And as a result of that, JS is available, HTML isn't available. So the Angular app can bootstrap and it's going to work offline. But by default, the service worker does nothing at all. Out of the box, for the browser, it will just pass every request through like normal. So to help with this, the Angular team has created a really great, fantastic service worker for us that is included with the Angular CLI. And this is really easy to add. It's a one-line thing to do. You do ng-add at Angular/PWA and specify the project. And afterwards, it's all set up for you. So the service worker has a lot of features. For example, caching and offline functionality. So as mentioned before, when you intercept a request, you need to make sure to route it to the correct version of the app in storage. And for that, you need to know which versions you have around and basically keep track of all of that state and all of those versions. So Angular CLI does this and offers a bunch of debug tools, which is really useful because the service worker intercepts everything. So even if you do full page reload, you clear cache, you go again, it's still going to load. So if you have a bug in the service worker, it can crash the entire site. And the great thing about this is that the Angular team has invested in this, and that's why we give a huge shout out to them because it's really rock solid. We've not had a single issue with this. And there are even emergency tools to remove a stuck service worker from the page. And this has just given us great peace of mind and kind of allowed us to push forward with this. Another thing that's great is the CLI or Angular Service Worker package provides us with a service that we can use to interact with the service worker. So updating the app is basically the same as updating any Angular app. For the PWA, we just push the updated code assets, JS files, to our CDN. And Angular Service Worker is automatically going to pick it up, start downloading these files in the background, and then allow us to activate this version once it's ready. And to interact with this and to kind of be able to show an UI for this process, which I will show.
It's actually pretty cool. You get an observable from the Angular Service Worker that gives you the status of the new files, version detected, install failed, version ready. It's a super slick dev experience. I just got to give shout outs to the Angular team for providing this service worker platform.
Show you right now. So we have a little update bar here, shows new version is available. Then clicking on update, activates the version, switches to the version. So to do this, we have Angular provide us with an observable of status events, which hooks into the service worker. And once we click on the update button, we can reload the page, the version is activated, and the user can enjoy the newest features. The other thing is this automatically forces an update for our users. This is very useful. If we don't manually click the update button after reload, the next time the user opens the app, basically, it's automatically going to use the newest version for us. And yeah, so since deploying and developing a PWA works the same way as any other Angular application, it becomes very straightforward to share code. And usually code sharing can be a bit difficult. So we started out with 2 repositories, and we found it's very difficult to coordinate changes. For example, when you update a component, you have to release a new version of the UI library. You have to create 2 PRs against each app, PWA and the web app. And we found that a monorepo helps a lot with this. And we're using NX for this. And NX defines a monorepo as a single repository containing multiple distinct projects with well-defined relationships. What this means is it's more than just co-locating code. We're not just throwing all of our code into one repository, but we make sure that we have libraries that have well-defined boundaries. And NX even provides us with a lot of tooling around this. So we get schematics and linters for library generations. And these encourage really good practices for our code. For example, our UI components have to be dumb because if we import a service from a component library or a UI library, then the linter will throw and won't let us do it. So this is fantastic. The other side is that it gives us tooling to release only affected apps. So we can have the PWA and the web app in the same repository, deploy and build only what's changed. So this has been great for us. Kind of as a side, we adopted Tailwind CSS as well. In our previous app, we used global less styles. This is a bit of an issue because they're not portable. The styles can create some conflicts. We updated our look a little bit and gave our PWA a refreshed design. And so we cannot just import the global less files from the big web app. But Tailwind kind of solved this for us because we can add Tailwind to both projects, and the styles are now completely portable. Components are self-contained, and since Tailwind classes are kind of like inline styles, there are no conflicts, and they can be imported in either app very easily. Another very critical part of making the PWA feel great is that you want to have buttery smooth animation. So animations are very critical to an app's feel. They really breathe life into the app and make it feel much more alive. A website versus an app, you can see like a website just feels very static. You click somewhere, it loads, next screen comes up. Whereas in an app, you generally have more dynamic movement. It's much snappier. And Angular animations allows us to do great variety of different effects. For example, staggered animations and normal DOM transforms as well. I'll show you a short demo of this looks like in our app. So this is a SVG animation. You can see here the cards stagger in. We can have drawers pop up and transform very smoothly. And this feels really great. And Angular really makes this easy for us. With Angular animations, of course, kind of your normal web animation rules still apply. We have to use transforms as much as possible and avoid layout recalculations. Otherwise, the performance is going to be bad. And speaking of performance, so even the best animations don't feel snappy when the browser drops frames. So we need to make sure to keep the main thread performant. We need to make sure we have good runtime performance. Basically, the app needs to run at 60 FPS. Otherwise, the animations cannot run at 60 FPS. And for an app, users really expect great performance. So we're all used to the really snappy performance of native apps. And this has long been an argument against PWAs that this performance cannot be achieved. We think we can get really close. And the biggest runtime performance killer for us was change detection and DOM modifications. I'll go into some more detail on the change detection. So this right here is basically the default change detection, what Angular does by default. And so we have a component anywhere in this component tree that uses that wants to render the current user. So we have a user service, contains current user property. After login, we post to our login endpoint, subscribe, set the current user on the service. And now Zone.js is going to pick up the HTTP request has happened. Zone.js is what powers Angular change detection. And it's going to check everything. So Angular notices Zone.js says something happened. So now it checks all of the components. This is obviously not great for performance because we are checking the entire app when something changed. The well-known and good solution to this to use on-push change detection, which allows us to introduce boundaries into our change detection trees. So when an on-push component is encountered, it will only be rendered if the inputs have changed or if the component itself triggered the change, basically. And to use on-push effectively, we have to change to push-based approach.
And you muted, so we can't hear him.
So we, instead of storing the current user directly, we store it as a behavior subject on the service. And after login, we push into that behavior subject. We subscribe using the async pipe, and that will trigger the change detection. Now, when we do this for all of our components, we don't need Zone.js anymore. We don't need to know that an HTTP request has finished to trigger change detection because we always push through in the async pipe, gets notified when something changed in a template. But we can do even better than this. The async pipe will mark all of the components dirty when a change happens that are in the ancestor path. So I will start, then look at each parent recursively, and mark all of those parents inside this chain for check as well. So we can improve this by simply swapping out the async pipe for what's called the push pipe, which is part of the RX Angular template library. And this allows us what's called localized change detection. And you can see the difference here. In the localized change detection, we can mark only the component dirty that actually changed where the observable change happened. And we don't have to mark every parent as dirty as well. So for us, we noticed we can use this exactly like the async pipe and get free performance gains. We haven't seen any drawbacks to this. A huge credit for this, first of all, for the library and the push pipe itself, but also for generally looking into Angular performance to Michael Latke. Michael is also doing a talk in ng-conf on Wednesday at 3:26 p.m. Called Partially Zoneless Performance Tuning Without Big Bang Refactorings. So for us, this wasn't a problem because we have a greenfield project, but we're really stoked about this call to see how we can bring the same techniques to our web app as well. Another major feature for PWA is that we can make our app work offline. And this is important especially for us in InnoVint, because sellers and wineries don't necessarily have the best internet connection or have internet connection at all. And so in order to make the app be useful, we need a bit more than just a service worker. We need more than just serving, like being able to give our HTML and JS from a cache. But we also want to populate our routes and our views with data so you can go around, look what's in your barrel, or record actions. And we found that local storage, the pretty obvious solution to this, is bad for performance and has some limits on how much you can store. A good way to solve this is IndexedDB. So it gives us a way to access our data asynchronously. We don't actually use the DB part of IndexedDB. We only use it because we can do background reads and writes without impacting our performance. We've found that IndexedDB crashes sometimes, even for major browsers. This happens, but there are workarounds. So these are somewhat well documented if you look around into the issues. What you can find, for example, is that connecting to a fake IndexedDB before you connect to your real one makes the first one crash, but then the second will work. And that gets rid of like 80% of the issues. Other than that, you basically need good retries. Now, what we learned overall is, first of all, that zoneless works really great. So since we built the app greenfield, we just took zone out from the very beginning. And this was more of an experiment. We fully expected to add it back at some point, but we encountered surprisingly few issues. So sometimes we saw that third-party components actually need Zone.js for change detection. So for example, the CDK has a virtual scroll component that we use. And for this one, since it doesn't hook into so Zone cannot detect anymore that user has scrolled and then trigger change detection as an effect, we had to hook that up ourselves. But this happened rarely, and it was usually pretty straightforward because you see changes are not propagating, and then you usually already know, okay, this is because we're zoneless. We generally found that push-based change detection is very intuitive. So when we write our app in a reactive style, we use NGRX component store for this. It kind of all falls into place easily. There's no issues where changes don't get picked up, and the performance kind of comes out of it almost free. There's no extra overhead, like kind of mental overhead involved in implementing this. We really like component store because it makes working with observables much easier, because we get some well-defined patterns such as selectors, updates, updaters, and effects without the overhead of a global store. And also we have some backend developers that can complete small fixes end-to-end on their own. And we've seen a lot of success with this approach because the surface area of component store is just much smaller. We don't have reducers and actions. And this makes it very easy to go in and use these abstractions of our RxJS. So this has been huge for our productivity. Because small drawback, we don't get as good as dev tools. And lastly, Angular is great for PWAs. It comes with a fantastic service worker implementation, really rock solid. A lot of things just work out of the box. Animations are great, and performance is pretty much a solved problem. So libraries are around, and we have techniques that make it pretty seamless. So we're very impressed with how smooth this was going and how great it works. And yeah, I hope there's something out of this technical part that you can take into your own apps.
All right. First of all, Valentin, thank you so much for that. I'm sure you'll be watching tomorrow when you wake up. That was really a great overview of sort of our InnoVint approach to PWAs and whatnot. I want to throw up here just real quick what our tech stack is. It sounds like you guys mostly see it now from that talk, in case you missed any part of that. We're going to wrap it up here. Before I do, I did want to sort of touch on the offline mode again. You might not think that you have a cellar or a vineyard that you need to support for your app to function for many hours, weeks on end without service. I do want to say, from a sort of user-centric approach here, having an app gracefully fall back to just work when cell service is sort of marginal is a huge win. Like, there is never any failed to load screens or any white pages. Having your app support offline first is huge wins from a user experience, even if, an hour in the offline cellar or vineyard isn't sort of a thing you need to support. All right. I think we've used up a bit more than time we wanted it to have, so we'll wrap it up here. I sort of want to touch on the future outlook of PWAs. We are obviously very biased. I really think they are the future of web dev. I think JavaScript is going to rule the world. I think JavaScript and JavaScript frameworks, as well as modern CPUs, are so good. The end result on a modern device running these frameworks meets the user experience needs. And that's 60 frames per second. That's all the great stuff we just showed. I do also think that for most companies, development velocity trumps everything, and having web, iOS, and Android all sort of homogenized is far more important than the 5% user experience gain you might achieve with native apps. I obviously made that number up. It's a little bit of hyperbole. I also think that Apple will continue to improve PWA support. That's a trend that continues to exist. Another hyperbole here. Native app writing is dead. I personally will never write it again, at least not for the CRUD apps that we're working on. And I had a lot of experience writing original iOS apps that I don't want to go back to. So yeah, look, we really just scratched the surface on our PWAs. We did our very best to crunch this down to 25 minutes. We went a smidgen over. We're obviously very passionate about this technology. This is honestly the start of our PWA. It's such a success for us. We're going to go even more and more into it. So please feel free to reach out to us and just chat about anything you saw on here. It's a true shame Valentin couldn't be here. It's literally 4 a.m. for him. And hopefully we can get you all everyone together again with Valentin around, and we can all chat about this stuff together. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was I'm sure you can see everybody's comments there in the chat. Everybody's just really excited about it. They're totally pumped by what you're showing web development and programming can be and what it is, where it has come today. So thank you for that. And do you want to, in the chat, just give away for if anybody wants to connect with you or ask follow-up questions or anything, just give them a way where they can connect with you and kind of chat and follow up.
Cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think the one takeaway is that, again, nothing that we're showing here is actually novel. Like, you can find a bunch of articles about how awesome NGRX or NG component stores, how service works, IndexedDB, all this cool stuff. And then it's cool that we really want to demonstrate that if you put it all together, there's something really great here from a user-centric perspective of really stellar experiences. So thanks for just giving us the time and space to do this, where we could talk for hours, and we're super excited to have a captive audience where we can just preach the cool things that Angular and PWA sort of offer us. So thanks again for having us, folks. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all relate to getting excited and passionate about what we do. So thanks for sharing. But okay, well, let's bring on our next 4 speakers. So we have Jordan Powell and Preston Lamb, Alisa Duncan, and Deborah Kurata. So welcome, all 4 of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here and being willing to go through our round of questions. How are you all feeling, though? I know, I was asking the other 3, we're the week before ng-conf. Are you feeling prepared, not prepared?
I was on vacation, so I didn't get my slides done before I left, as I was trying to. So I just did my slides yesterday.
Nice.
So I'm feeling exceptionally prepared. How about the rest of you?
Well, I kind of lucked out. Yeah, mine is one of the 5-minute talks, and the 5-minute talks are actually going to be recorded. And so I did mine about a month ago or so and got it mailed in, so I can relax next week, unlike probably most of the speakers here. So
Yeah, I have a 5-minute talk that's played, which like Preston, I was like, shoot, I need to get that recorded. So I got that recorded, but we're doing a workshop, and a lot of the things that I'm talking about, like I was also building. So like I had to get that built before I could like focus on the talk. So now that it's built, so now I'm like shifting gears to get everything like buttoned up with the workshop. So
Nice. Yeah, because you're doing a workshop and a talk, right?
yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
I'm super nervous.
Yeah.
My first time talking. Super nervous.
That's okay. I know you've spoken at our meetup before, and you've also been on the Angular Experience podcast. I have no doubt it's going to be a fantastic presentation.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your words of reassurance. We'll see. I'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
There's just so many people.
Yeah. Well, let's write off of that, because a lot of people are asking, and in fact, this is one of our attendee questions. It goes more towards teaching rather than speaking, but I think we could go both ways there. So for the four of you, how do you take your thoughts? How do you go from idea and, like this thought of giving a talk, giving a presentation, or teaching? Deborah, I know you've made many, many courses. Preston, you've made courses. How do you take your thoughts and ideas and organize yourselves in a way that you can make these, all four of you are very well-spoken speakers, presenters, teachers, and, so I guess the idea is like going from concept to reality. How are you making that happen?
Want me to go first?
Yeah, anybody can jump in.
It starts in the shower. I don't know why, but I always get inspired in the shower. We remodeled our house about 6 years ago, and we have this nice big shower, and the water pressure is good finally, and I just get inspired. And that's kind of the first thing always, is to get that inspiration, to get that thought as to what approach you're going to do, what sample makes sense that's going to show that approach. And it seems like once you have that inspiration, it makes it a lot easier to figure out what you're going to cover. And then I find that the next step has to be writing. I just write, especially for any of the courses that need a logical progression. And I start to get to a point and I'm like, oh, well, I can't talk about this because I haven't covered properties yet. So I have to back up and add some more. And I spend a lot of time then just on the writing part of it and getting it all written. I don't do that for talks, but for any training where you have to make sure that you cover topics in a longer format, in a organized way, I find the writing part really helps.
Yeah, I think sorry about that. I think my process is kind of similar in a lot of ways, but really, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're trying, like the situation or the type of talk or course or whatever you're preparing. Obviously, if you're preparing a course, then you have a lot more information that you can cover. If it's just a talk, 20 minutes or 5 minutes or a blog post, then really I just try to share exactly the amount of information that they need for that topic. So in a blog post, for example, it may depend on having some background knowledge in Angular, but I don't have time to write all that background knowledge for every talk. And so you might write just a little, hey, if to really understand this, you kind of need to know more about reactive forms or template driven form. So go check this out. But I'm just going to talk about this part, and then I'll kind of walk through sometimes implementing whatever I'm writing about to make sure that the steps that I've written about make sense. And if I can't follow my notes through to get to a finished product, then I know that whoever is going to come behind me and read it after me is going to get stuck as well. And so I'll just kind of go through that and make sure that I've covered at least all the information needed for that little piece.
Yeah, I would say for me, I would like answer the question a little more abstractly. Like, I feel like for me, like I just try to live my life in a way like I'm always learning. And so I feel like the best way to learn is like when you have to teach something. And so for me, a lot of times I'll just like write a blog article or make a video or something, like honestly, so I'll remember it myself in the future. There's so many times I'll go back to a blog article I wrote like a year or so ago, just because I forgot how to, whatever it is, like forgot how to publish a library or, do something with Angular forms or whatever it is. So I guess obviously like you care about who your intended audience is and things like that. But for me, like I'm always like the first like I'm always think of it through the lens of like future self, like what would I want to know if I were because I'm just take what I know now and I want to be able to remember in the future. So for me, I just think of it like more abstractly and just like I think sometimes we put too much pressure on it, like, oh, you have to be like this genius or this expert or something like that. And for me, it's just like just want to be someone who can give back to the community and give back to my future self. So
yeah, I think it was Craig who mentioned this earlier. I picked topics that I don't know a whole lot about. And I use that as an opportunity to learn more about it. Or maybe I'm reading through documentation and say, oh, this sounds pretty cool. I'd like to learn more about, this whatever thing and try to dive in deeper. So that's how I think about topics. Now, in terms of organizing them, I also write them out. I think for this particular ng-conf talk, I wrote 4 blog posts about it. Like I dived in really deep, maybe too deep. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, doing that, taking outlines. And then one thing in terms of after like putting together the notes and looking at, like an overall structure of a slide, just because it makes sense to me doesn't mean that it'll make sense to other people. So I love having my support network to bounce ideas off of or say, hey, can I steal 20 minutes of your time and run through this? It's going to be completely unpolished and the delivery is going to be awful, but does this make sense to you? Or am I making a jump somewhere? So that's also really helpful for me.
You're muted, Brooke.
Yes, I am. I was just saying, I was noticing some people in the chat saying how teachers are always the ones that learn the most. And I think that's so true, that when you take the time and just let out that curiosity, right? I think it really is that teachers are the ones who are just following that curiosity and interest. And that seems to be when you end up learning the most. So I think all 4 of you were kind of saying that, and then different processes for actually like getting it down on paper or into your slides. But all right, let's kind of take it back to a fun question, not necessarily programmer related. In fact, I want to ask it as if being a programmer or a web developer were not on the table. What is a job that you would have if you couldn't be in, I'm going to say, yeah, we'll just say developer. Like if you couldn't be a developer or programmer or what you're doing now, what other job would you take and why?
So I've been thinking about this and I don't know. I don't have like a specific one other than I'd want to be involved in like sports in some way. Like if I could be involved with an NBA team or an MLB team or something like that, I think that'd be really cool. yeah, just something involved with a sports team.
Comes from Mr. Utah Jazz, everybody. He loves the Jazz.
I would say I run a nonprofit, so I would probably like do that as a career, even though I've done things like that in the past. It doesn't pay nearly as well as being a developer, so that's definitely the trade-off, but it is definitely rewarding work. But I'm also with Preston too. I love sports, so that sounds like pretty legit to, work for a sports team.
It's all those California teams that you love, right?
Not me, no. Ohio.
I'm teasing. I know I'm teasing because you're like diehard Ohio everything.
If I could do anything, I would probably want to move to New Zealand and be a tour guide in Hobbiton and spend all of my free time just hanging out there.
Nice.
But more realistically, I think if I wasn't a developer as a child and young adult, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. So I think I would probably do that. And I actually have a degree in math and physics, so I would probably teach math. So that's what I would be doing.
I think everybody just went, yep, that makes total sense for you.
Absolutely.
And then, but we have some friends who are here from New Zealand, Craig and Chris, and Craig, our speaker, and they're all saying, yes, come to Hobbiton.
I think I'll have the most boring answer. So previous to being a developer, I was a chemist, and I worked with coatings, like surface coatings, paint. And then when I decided to transition into a different career, I ultimately went and got my comp sci degree, but I had contemplated going back to school to be a pharmacist. So I probably would do that.
What was boring about that?
About
fascinating to me. Yeah, no, all of that was amazing. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, the pharmacists, they wanted me to go back to school for a lot longer. They wouldn't take organic chemistry that I've already taken away. I'm not going to do that again.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think those are all great answers. All right, a little bit back to more of a serious question here. And really this is just how much you feel comfortable sharing, but what is perhaps one of your biggest failures as a software engineer, as a programmer, and how did you get through that? Or alternatively, like what advice can you give other people if they're in a similar situation?
I can start. I'll try. So I think maybe this is like the completely wrong answer, but what is failure? Isn't failure just learning and growing? So I don't know if calling something a failure and saying like it was bad is necessarily bad. I mean, there's things that I regret doing, right? Like I wish that I could have done something differently, but that's different from saying I failed at it. Since I learned something new when I did that. So, and I think there's lots of little things where that could be where you can apply those, like, oh, I wish I did this differently, right? Or
I really like that answer, though. I think I was sharing on the podcast last week or the week before, I can't remember which, but basically one of my heroes is Walt Disney. And a lot of people forget that before Disney became Disney, he had several setbacks and went bankrupt because he was trying so hard to make his dreams come true. And but was that a failure, or was it just part of his journey, part of his story, getting to where he eventually got to? So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, this is another one I thought about as I was preparing for today. And I can't necessarily think of a time when I like really failed, and or at least that it was like a big deal. But like I've been recently going back and we're changing the design of our app. And so we're moving off one design system to another. And at the same time, I'm trying to refactor code to make it simpler and stuff like that. And I was just telling my wife yesterday, it's funny looking at it. And like, I've asked myself a few times, like, what was I doing 18 months ago or 2 years ago when I was writing this code initially? Like, why were we doing it like that? And the answer is because that's all I knew how to do. And so that's what I did because I knew how to do that. And now I know better ways to handle that and to write the code. And I think if you focus on your growth and you look at, hopefully you're in a situation where you can do that too. I know that, you know, maybe not everybody is, but if you can focus on the fact that that every mistake that you make is a chance to learn how not to do something so that you can learn how to do it correctly the next time, then I think it becomes a little bit less negative when you make a mistake, and you can just realize that, well, now I know not to do that, and next time I'll do something different, and hopefully it works out better.
Isn't perspective such a game changer though? Like your perspective on, man, that was a failure, I'm so dumb, versus, yeah, that was kind of a failure, but I learned from it and I'm going to do this, that, and this. Like it's so much is like a mental game. And if we can just be positive and kinder to ourselves, wow, what a difference that makes. Super good thoughts, Preston.
The thing that came to mind for me when I saw the question was I worked for a person who the company was not happy with his progress, and so they sent in someone new, and that someone new he and his assistant took each of us that worked for him into a room, sat us at one end of a really long conference table, and he and his assistant sat at the other end, like a mile away, you know, kind of like the Putin kind of picture, and just did everything possible to make you feel as intimidated as they could. And so if there was one thing that I would have learned, that I wish I would have known going into that, it's just not to let them make you feel intimidated. And that's something I think a lot of people work on, especially in the developer community, because a lot of us are a little bit more you know, internal as opposed to introverts instead of extroverts or whatever. And it's very easy for us to get intimidated. You know, you go look at the ng-conf audience and there's 1,000 people sitting there, and it's very easy to get intimidated by that. And you just have to decide that it's not going to be that way, that you're not going to let that intimidate you, and you're not going to let that guy sitting 50 feet away from you at this really long table make you feel like you're small or less than that you can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to mention kind of a lot of the same things, that I'm not a big believer in like regrets. I feel like a lot of things I've failed at, you know, in quotes, maybe it's like a specific problem, whether it be like, you know, debugging something. I remember one time, like I was doing something in like Drupal, or it was like this, it was like nasty, like back in the day. And I spent like hours trying to figure out why this thing wouldn't work. And it's because like I was missing a semicolon or something like really dumb. And I spent like hours wasting time, but it was like taught me a good lesson, you know, like there's lots of things. I think you learn when you experience adversity, and it, you know, it's easy as developers. We want to always try to take like the path of least resistance a lot of times, which we want to be efficient with our time. But sometimes learning the hard way is not necessarily like a bad thing.
Right. Totally agree. Again, I think it goes back to that mindset and just seeing everything. One of my favorite quotes, I've shared it a few times, is just that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And that's something that's really helped me, especially in recent years, but just remembering that, you know, don't like, I don't know, just it's your perspective and just looking at it that life is happening for you and it's all here just to help you grow and be better at your job, better as a human being, all of the above. But okay, last question, everybody. And I think, you know, some of you have given multiple talks, multiple, like lots, like, right, Deborah, you do this regularly. So given that you've spoken before, even if it was just at a meetup or maybe just made a course or something, but what can you offer to our attendees as, you know, advice or pros for why it's worth your time to engage in these kinds of content sharing? Why is it something that you have found to be beneficial to you personally and professionally?
I'll actually tell a story. Actually, when I was at my first ng-conf, which was actually the last one, 2019, I had actually reached out to someone on the NGRX core team, and they had worked in similar backgrounds and were solving similar problems. And at the time, my company sent me, and we were like contemplating whether to switch to NGRX at the time. And so I reached out to this person. I was like, I don't know, like they're not going to respond back. You know, I'm just like some guy at this conference, and end up, because I wanted to get their thoughts on whether they would recommend, given like our situation, if we should migrate. But anyways, fast forward, like now, like that person is like one of my best friends, like someone that I've like have a real relationship with. And since then it has like completely changed the trajectory of my professional career. And so like for me, him reaching out and like just answering that DM like changed my life in a lot of ways, and you know, end up creating great relationships as a result of it. And I wouldn't be here, I guarantee you, if I hadn't had done that. So I think that for me, I always like try to approach this topic with like a heart of gratitude, like knowing that like I'm so appreciative of what, you know, this person and others in the community have done for me when I've needed something or had a problem I couldn't solve. And so I know other people are in the same spot. And so I just try to like use my gratitude as the motivation for spending time to like give back to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think doing all the extra stuff that I've done and working on that, I think more than anything, it's just given me confidence that I can do my job, and that is worth a lot, to be able to go to a job and at least feel confident that people aren't looking at you thinking that like you're an imposter or something like that. Like we've all felt like that. And so I've tried to work hard to be able to bring value to my team. And that's just made me feel more confident at work. And sometimes like, sometimes I do more of the side work and the learning and stuff outside of work hours more than others. I haven't done a lot for a few weeks. It's been a little bit crazy as summer has wound down, and so I haven't been doing as much. But there are some times where I just sat on the couch in the evening and I'd write a couple blog posts or whatever, and so like it gives me enjoyment. It gives me confidence. I've met lots of people. I met Brooke at the last in-person ng-conf, and also got to know Joe Eames pretty well through that, and lots of other people. Like I've met lots of people. I've talked to most people here on the chat or in the panelists and stuff like that. I think I've talked to everyone at least a couple times through Twitter and stuff like that. And And so I feel like I have like this community behind me where if I have some question or something I need to solve, I know there are people out there that have probably seen the issue and can help me. And so it doesn't make me feel quite so alone or lost when I'm trying to do stuff.
One thing that I really admired about you, Preston, before you started making your courses, when you did come and approach Thinkster about making those courses, was that you just went for it. You know, like you didn't let any potential fears or anything hold you back, but you just went for it. And I think once you take that first step, then the next step becomes easier and easier and easier after that. So that's something really to admire about you.
And to be fair, I still remember being like the day before I had my meeting with Brooke and Joe, wanting to cancel it because I was nervous. And so if you've ever felt like that, like we all have, I'm sure we've all been afraid and almost wanted to cancel, but there's been a few times where I wanted to do that and I didn't, and I've been really grateful I didn't. So if you're feeling like that, just take that next step. It might be scary, can be hard, it'll make you nervous, but those are definitely the times where I've stretched the most.
Yeah, I think it's the stretching, right? And growing, like really, if you push yourself to the point where it's uncomfortable, that's where you're growing. That's where you're learning. You don't want to push yourself too far, but there needs to be some discomfort to learn and to try new things. So my entry into speaking in this world and Angular was through volunteering at Women in Tech workshops. I'm on the NG Girls core team, and that's where I met Brooke, actually. So it's been great, like building out that community of women who want to learn Angular, and the mentors who support that initiative is fantastic. I also volunteer locally at Kansas City Women in Tech, and they're some of my my closest tech friends, right? It's really great having that community and that close-knit group to be able to reach out to and sometimes see at conferences. So one of the things I really enjoy about speaking is also getting to see my friends, you know, and getting to meet new friends. That's really important to me.
I guess one of the things that was brought up earlier is that to really learn something well yourself, that you need to spend some time thinking about how you would teach it to others. One of the things that I'm most sad about, it's a little bit off topic here, but I used to really like helping people on platforms like Stack Overflow, and it really makes me sad how mean those people are to new people. And I don't know if there would be enough of us ever that could come together and change that. I tried to kind of talk to some of them at one point, and they just shut me down faster than I could type. So I would just love it if there was a place like Stack Overflow, or as a part of Stack Overflow, that was for beginners, especially like Angular beginners or web developer beginners, that we could provide help and meet new people and really, you know, reach out, because it's so hard on Twitter. I mean, how much code can you fit? I mean, you can kind of do a screenshot, but it's difficult. So I don't know if that's something that anyone else would be thinking about as well, as whether there would be a way to make that nice. I know several people have tried to do, you know, let's do our own thing somewhere else, but Stack Overflow has so much of the impetus and the you know, history that it would be really hard, I think, to start over from scratch and draw in the people. Yeah, Stack Overflow 2.0. There we go.
I've found Angular Reddit to be pretty good, but the problem is that it's a split community. So they're split between two subreddits, and each community doesn't want to integrate with the other. So
Nice. Did we get everybody? I think we did. Jordan, did you share on that one? Okay, it's all blending together. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I did.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving you off. But everybody, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your answers. A lot of those I know were more deep than others, but we have gone over. I apologize for that. However, I think a lot of this was so worth our time, and I hope everybody's okay having stayed a little bit longer.